Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Vox Vomitus, also known as Word Vomit. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the award-winning author of Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as the Hotel series. I am joined today by my two Vox Vomitus vixens, Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books, and Trisha Mckee, author of the Beyond series, and soon to be published next week. It's Through the Motions. What is the name of this series? I always call it Josie series.
The Josie series.
So Trisha will be having a book birthday next week. Ooh. We are joined today by J.T Ellison, New York Times bestseller, thriller writer extraordinaire, and the reason why I still am tired and it's Wednesday for her amazing book, Her Dark Lies. J.T, welcome to the show.
I am so thrilled to be here, and I'm not sorry for keeping you up.
No, it was good for me to stay up past midnight and remember what that feels like again.
I hear you. I totally get that.
It was one of those nights where it was like 8 p.m. and I'm just like, I could go to bed now, I guess. And then I'm just like, I'm just going to read a little. Read the whole book. Read the whole book.
In the morning. Here you go. I'm glad to hear that it actually was engaging enough to keep you awake. That's lovely.
It was very good. So JT, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your new book, Her Dark Lies.
So I'm a thriller writer from Nashville. This is my 24th published novel. And I started back in, I guess my first book was in 2007. So I've been kind of banging them out pretty quick. I switched from series to standalone a few years ago. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm writing these standalones, and Her Dark Lies is, I guess, my fifth standalone. Gosh, that's kind of crazy. It's my fifth standalone. It is about a young up-and-coming artist named Claire Hunter who has met the man of her dreams, Jack Compton, and he is the son of an incredibly wealthy computer magnate, and they are getting ready to leave to go get married on his family's private island, Isola, off the coast of Italy. And of course, things just don't go as planned. Because it's a wedding. You can't have a wedding
because it's
right? This isn't a romance novel, it's a thriller.
Wrong genre.
Right. I know. I was like, the way you set that up, it's like, and nothing goes according to plan. Like, wackiness ensues. No, very
a lot of wackiness.
A lot of wackiness. A lot of dark, sordid, twisty wackiness.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with bloody over wacky, but wacky's fine. Go on.
Yeah. First, I loved the book. I don't want to say too much spoilery wise, but it kept me on my toes the entire time. And I read a lot of thrillers, and I read a lot of mystery and a lot of horror. So it's hard to trick me. And I was tricked, I think, at the end of every chapter. I was just like, oh, what the hell's happening? Do you plot all of this out, or does it just like happen?
All of the above.
Okay.
I'm kind of a plotster. So you've heard of pantsers and plotters, right?
Yeah,
so I'm kind of a mix.
And we've heard it called a plantser as opposed to a plotster. But I like them too.
Plotser might be heavier on the plotting,
and
plantsers are heavier on the pants.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
How heavy are your pants?
I'm definitely heavier on the pants. Sadly. Thank you, pandemic.
2020.
I feel like the hashtag quarantine.
Right, hashtag quarantine on that one.
Hashtag heavier in the pants.
Heavier in the pants. This one was really different than all of my other ones. Usually I do a little more pantsing than plotting. This one, it's an homage back to some of our earlier Gothic thrillers, right?
Yes.
The Rebecca,
and
then yes. So it was actually while I was listening to Rebecca doing research for another book that a very fundamental question came to me, and I decided I probably needed to answer that question. I was really intrigued by the thought. It was a great thought. I don't necessarily want to say it because it's total giveaway of what the story is. But what that question was, that intrinsic, oh my gosh, this is never answered. I want to know the answer to this, is what kind of drove this story, which sounds great. Unfortunately, nothing I did with it worked because it's an homage, right? You want to give everything its due. You want to have the appropriate tropes. You don't want the tropes to feel stale or copied or any kind of, this is just a regurgitation of somebody else's work.
Right.
It has to be something that's yours and unique, and that was really challenging. So everything I did didn't work, and I've got 7 versions of this book, not 7 drafts, 7 versions.
What?
Because nothing,
like with
it just wouldn't.
Ending.
Well, I never got to the ending. This one. I broke every rule I've ever told any other writer they need to do and think about when they're approaching the page. No matter what you do, finish the book before you try to edit it, right? Isn't that our number one goal? Finish, then edit.
We call it the vomit draft around these parts.
Right? That's what you're supposed to. Yeah. Well, I got 60,000 words in 3 times and just kept going back and circling back and saying, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. The setup's not right. I just couldn't get the setup right. And then I finally just gave up, and I finished, and I sent it to my agent and my editor, and I was like, I've got a massive timeline issue. Something's very, very drastically wrong with this. And they came back and they're like, yeah, you've got a really big timeline issue. I'm like, I know.
I said that already.
I've already said that. Help me fix it.
Introduce a time machine.
Yes, do something. I'm on Twitter asking for people, how do you do timelines? And all it was,
how do I do timelines? I've read, you wrote 21 books before this, and you're on Twitter saying
24. Yeah, you forget. You forget how to do it every single time.
Every time is the first time.
Yes, that's true.
Every time is the first time. It's one of those really weird things that, I kind of take for granted that things do flow pretty well. I'll have problems with, I've chosen the wrong point of view, or I don't like my setting, or things like that. But to have something as fundamental as a timeline just refuse to work. And I ended up having to drop an entire subplot and just kill it. Just kill it dead.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. Did you cry? Did you drink? Did you scream and punch
I was
a pillow?
drinking. There was a lot of drinking.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a lot of, you can have some of that for me because that looks really good. Yeah, there was a lot of drinking. Obviously it was mid-pandemic, so we actually even vacated and went and house sat so I could get a completely different point of view. See different things, hear different things, smell different things, and that helped a lot.
But you weren't house sitting in Italy, were you?
No, in Florida.
Yeah. That would have helped. But
Italy would have helped.
Florida.
I didn't want to go to.
You couldn't go to Italy.
Yeah, I don't want to go to Italy right now. That's my family over there. They're still having all kinds of problems and lockdowns. Bless their hearts. It's just hard.
Do they have their own island?
No.
Okay.
They do not. A lovely villa, they live up north. They live in the middle of town. It's really cool, but it's nothing like that.
Well, I love what you mentioned as far as talking about the different points of view, because that was one of the things. So I listened to it on Audible. So I got to hear these different voices, and it was a little different when you were having a narrator do this for you and change the point of view. Did you always have that kind of shifting point of view where sometimes it's first person and sometimes it's third person?
Yes, because mostly that's an element that I'm doing as I'm drafting a book. I'm never quite sure what I'm going to land on, what feels right. Mm-hmm. You guys are nodding, so you understand this.
Yeah.
You just don't necessarily know what's going to feel right. And I changed the point of view a few times, and I finally found, Jack's going to have to be in third person, and Claire's going to be in first person, and our narrator is going to be in first person, and that's just okay. And guess what? Let's do it in present tense just to make it fun.
I think, the point of view and the tenses, the book that I just am kind of on final edits of right now, I had the hardest time figuring out what tense it was. I honestly kept going back and forth. I'm like, it's definitely present tense. It works better. And then I'm like, no, it works better as past. So I ended up with like this fourth draft that switched all the time. And I'm like, now it's just a mess.
Now it's a mess.
Now it's a mess. I don't
Been
even
there.
know. So like you have those like drafts that you have to slog through and just literally change the tense of everything. And I'm like, I hate writing. I hate sentences.
I have a rule. I only mess with that stuff in short stories. So I'm not trying to fix 100,000 words of a tense and change, you know, but for some reason the standalones really lend themselves to experimentation. And that's what I have found. Every book, when I think I've got something nailed, nope, I don't. And I end up having to go back and change it. The one I'm working on now is the first time in 5 standalones that I'm comfortable with the point of view as I'm going. It's great. I like it. It works.
How many words deep are you right now?
I just closed it right before I got on with y'all. 56,000, 57,000.
Oh,
Okay.
Substantial.
So you're not going to get to 70,000 and then go, no, I need to change all this again.
You know, never say never, right? Yeah, right. I hope not. I really want to power through and get this draft done, and you know, then try to fix it instead of what I've been doing before. But it's gone easier. I mean, and every book is different. Some books take, you know, I wrote a book in 45 days. It just literally vomited out, and this one took 14 months.
Wow.
So, you know,
so you started writing it before the pandemic.
Yes.
And then had to kind of, as we all did, switch our mindset in the middle
switch mindsets. And it had a couple weird things. I had to have knee surgery, and then I had to have another knee surgery because the first one didn't work. So I had surgery brain. Right. And then we have pandemic.
What is surgery brain? Is it just because
it's like pregnancy brain? It's just, you know, the anesthesia really does kind of scramble your brain, and the synapses just don't fire the way they used to. I mean, I'm hearing something about COVID that your IQ literally drops 8.5 points while you're trying to get through all of this, because it acts the same way. It just creates a fog. And there was a lot of fog and pain and painkillers and therapy and distraction, right? Distraction is probably the biggest part of that, because, you know, every day you got to go down and go to therapy. You've got to go out and do your exercises, all these things that are not a normal part of your day. Mm-mm. So that throws everything off. Then I had a book tour, and then COVID like kicked in as soon as I finished tour. So yeah, I literally canceled the last couple of things. I was like, you know what? I'm shutting myself down. I don't like the way this looks. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, everything shut down. So, you know, it was just a challenging time and a challenging book. And if anything, it taught me, oh my God, look what you can do with all of these things stacked against you. You can still create something that's going to keep somebody up until 2 a.m. So. Yeah.
Did you find that there was a benefit though with having, not that it was interrupted so much, but you had a longer length of time to kind of have it seep into you and think about it and, you know, let it live within your imagination and head. Sometimes I feel if a book takes longer and there's things that, you know, interrupt it, that I go back to it and it's almost like a fresh, you know, view on it.
Sure. That's not what happened. No.
But that theory is beautiful.
It's a great theory. And actually, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I just got back to work this week on the new book after all the tour stuff that's, you know, just been bam, bam, bam. And yes, I went back to the beginning, and I've been reading. I'm like, oh my God, you're brilliant. This is wonderful. I found
that's always good
thread that wasn't there before that can change the plot. And I was like, oh, that's great. Fresh eyes are wonderful.
Yes.
I couldn't allow myself fresh eyes. I literally just banged the rock every single day, whether it worked or didn't. And that's not necessarily the right way to go about this. I was blocked, and I didn't want to admit it. And that's...
Wow. Was some of that because you were on deadline, or were there other forces pushing you to just keep banging at it? Like, was that
I was on deadline.
Okay.
I was on deadline, and I missed my deadline. It's the first time I've ever missed a deadline. You know, had to push the deadline back.
COVID and surgery are pretty good excuses for missing deadlines. I mean, I will write the get out of jail free card on that one.
I had already missed the deadline when we shut down.
Oh.
I appreciate
I tried, JT. I tried.
Well, we can blame the anesthesia for then.
We're going to blame the anesthesia, because that truly, I was starting to get back. I had surgery in June, and then I started to get myself back on, on my feet. And I went to Thriller Fest and did all this stuff on crutches. And, I spent 6 weeks on crutches, and it was like it was just a little meniscus tear. This is something
I've
really
had
wrong.
that surgery.
It's super easy. It's supposed to be in and out, done off, a couple of weeks back on the golf course.
Yeah. It wasn't for me. I had 8 months of physical therapy total.
Yeah. Okay. So now,
So I was dumb. I had my surgery, and I was doing professional theater at the time. And I was like, I'll just wrap it and definitely dance on stage in this show. No, no, you're not supposed to do any of those things. And I just kept saying, it's only a meniscus tear. What's the big deal?
I know. That's what I kept saying. So they had another doctor went in and fixed it, but that was in November. So June, just starting to come back to life. November, boom.
All over again.
Yeah. So it was just one of those, one of those books. Every once in a while, I've only had one other that did this. Thank God. Really, that's good, right?
Was that other one a standalone also, or was that in one of your series?
No, it was one of my series. It was The Cold Room.
Was it the starter of a series or later in a series?
It was the fourth book, which to me, the fourth book in a series is where the series actually starts, because the first book, you're meeting all the characters. It's all fun. It's all exciting. Second book, okay, now you know them. So now you get to see how they work together. Third book, you realize all the mistakes you made in books 1 and 2, that you've set this all up, and you're not going to be able to sustain a series past the trilogy at this point. And so you have to kind of blow it up and start over. And number 4 is where the series really begins. So it was my number 4, and I had realized, wow, I have put too many constraints here. There's too many coincidences. This is never going to work, and I've got to rethink how I do all of this. And that's, that kind of threw me. And there was some life stuff going on there too. So you can't, physical resistance is a real thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Do you have a group of like writer friends, beta readers, critique partners that you bounce ideas off of and work with while you're writing, or are you a solitary in your room, in your office?
If I start getting in trouble, I have people I reach out to for sure. My dad's one of my first readers, and he is just fantastic and really can, so I send him this. I'm like, I've got a timeline problem. He calls me back and he's like, you got a timeline problem.
Dad?
No one's helping you.
Nobody would help me. I know that.
Everybody's
This is why you had to go to Twitter and ask them.
Yeah, this is what we call issue spotting in law school, and it is important to spot the issue. But if we don't ever get past that, you're not getting a lot of help.
I'm telling you, it was
a problem there, JT.
Yeah, it's like, no joke. I'm aware of this. I just don't know how to fix it.
Like, you're my dad. Fix my problem for me. Right? Imagine I'm a child.
No, and I don't want you to spoil any of this, so I'll ask you later what the timeline problem was, because
I can tell you.
Okay, I was gonna say, tell us what the timeline problem was, because having read it, the timeline worked really well. So where did it start? So that was giving you so much trouble.
The timeline came from the subplot that was happening in Nashville. So with what happens in the beginning of the book in Nashville, that actually happened at a different point in time. And Carmen Harris, who is the security lead, was actually the cop that was working that case.
Oh, okay.
So I had to change the character to what ended up being the problem is a lot of the really cool action was happening off the island.
No.
Yeah.
Which doesn't work. I mean, duh. You need the action happening to your characters, not adjacent to your characters. It was a really good lesson for me. I don't know what I was thinking, except for, surgery brain. But so different continent timelines as well, which I've done before with no problem, but this one just eluded me.
Well, I love that you had, predominantly everything on this island the entire time, because it not only did I see shades of Rebecca, obviously, all over this. I'm a huge Rebecca fan, but there was also Agatha Christie, and then there was one. It gave you like that closed door mystery, but on this beautiful Italian island. And also, I'm mad at you because I miss Italy so bad.
Me too.
The book I just finished writing, part of it takes place in Italy. Then I read your book. Then I'm reading another book right now, and part of that takes place in Italy. And I'm like, oh, pandemic, you're killing me.
Well, and I just want to shout out for your cover, because I loved your cover. And then as I understood more about the book, I'm like, this went from being beautiful and enchanting to terrifying. I'm like, this is a scary ass cover. But I didn't get that. And you don't look at that and think that and go, oh, and now it's right behind you there too. It's coming for you. Sorry, just kidding. But I loved how you worked that in, that the setting became such, not just a character, but this actual component that was a real element to the story, that you're aware of what the island's doing and its moods and the weather. And okay, well, now we have to move things around, because what's the island going to do next? What's the island going to interfere with signals and boat rides, and everything's thrown into the mix. So my hats off to you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, the cover is just absolutely brilliant. And it's exactly that. It looks so inviting. And then you find out, no, that is not, the island is not a good place, right?
I know.
It has its own personality. I love it. You said its own moods. And that's exactly it. That was the other challenge with this book. I've never written a setting that I made up. I always have, my books are always in cities or places that I've been and that I know, and I can pick up the the map and go, oh, okay, that's where that happens, and I can visually see it. This one I had to make up whole cloth, and that was a first for me as well. I've made up houses, but not entire settings.
I was going to say, I figured it was a made-up island because since it's owned by the family, you couldn't make up an island. You couldn't take a real island and then just give it to somebody. Like, it's theirs now. Because there's probably some family that owns it and does not like being acquainted with these folks that you have are marrying into. But I was wondering if you based it on some real islands and what kind of research you did for that.
So I actually was in Italy for my 50th birthday. And my whole family was there. Our Italian family was there. A whole bunch of our American family came. And so we were having this big, huge family trip. And we ended up on Lake Como. And there's an island in the middle of Como called Comincina. And that, as we were sitting there having my birthday dinner, and a yacht pulls up to the island and out spills a wedding party. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And it's a big family joke. There's always a wedding, right? That's everywhere we go in the world. There's always a wedding. So we're laughing about that. And then the sun goes down and we hear this huge party and then fireworks go off. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really cool. And I look up Comincina because I'm curious sort, and it has all these wild legends around it. Like you have to drink a certain kind of coffee before you leave so the demons don't follow you home. And I'm like,
I love that. Look at
so
Trisha's
cool.
eyes were just like, boom, a short story idea.
Cool, right? So I started immediately, and again, I was listening to Rebecca. So boom, those two ideas just merge, right? And now I know I've got a book, right? It's like, oh, I've got a book, I've got a setting, but that island wasn't, Comincina is easily accessible. And, even if there was a storm, you'd still you could take a rowboat, you could swim. And so I couldn't do that. So I took Comincina, married it to Capri, and then pushed it off even further west where nobody could reach it easily. A ferry only goes once a week because it's so far. You can get to it by helicopter, yacht, or the once a week ferry, and that's it. So when there's a big storm and Italy is having their worst weather in years for their wedding weekend, I mean, hello, sign, maybe not a good idea.
Reconsider.
Reconsider this.
Like if the gods are against you,
Exactly, right?
Like,
And of course, this island has Venus worshippers and all of these,
yes.
crazy, weird little things that I just thought were a lot of fun. So,
Well, and you also had the setting being a place of an artist colony earlier. So I love how you tied that into Claire and her art. And I love how you described Claire's artistic practices. Now, do you have an art background yourself? Do you paint? Were you able to kind of bring yourself in there? Or are you just channeling the version of you that could paint?
I channeled my Bob Ross late at night. I am not a painter at all. I have no painting talent. I've always wanted to, though, to the point where my husband has given me canvas and oils and everything. I've just never gotten the guts to use them. I was on tour for Good Girls Lie, which is my last book. And my best friend was putting me up, and her husband is an artist. And I said, hey, can I, I've got my best friend there. Now I can, try. Can I try some of your oils? And so they opened an oil and opened a canvas, and I was able to, mess with it and paint something that was awful. And he's now turned into this gorgeous painting, which is really fun. He used it as the background for a sunset. It was really neat. But it really gave me an idea of what Claire does, how she does it. And she's a large format oil painter, right? So she's like Jackson Pollock. These are huge. These are gigantic pieces that she does, and it's all modern abstracts, which is my favorite. So I love art. I would love to be able to create art, but I am not an artist. So I did that, and yes, watched a lot of Bob Ross, watched a lot of YouTube videos, bought color wheels. I'm a Twyla Tharp devotee, so every book has its own box with its stuff in it, and in that box there's the color wheel and this big chart, and so being able to say know what pains was huge to being able to make that real. So I hope I did it right.
It worked for me, but I am not a painter. I'm a fake painter who I like to mess with acrylics. I have tried. I am terrible, but I like doing it. But I loved how you brought that in. So it made me believe in her as a person and see who she was, including her backstory and how she found herself in her art and how she can see herself going forward with her art, but also how she could possibly be used for her art and her connections.
Absolutely. I mean, she's really interesting.
Hi,
She's kind of a, hey, Tori. Hey, honey. She's so awesome. We all love Tori.
Tori was on our show last week, and she was just like, I'm reading J.T. Ellison's new book. And we screamed. We're like, she's coming on our show next week.
She's fabulous. So Claire is almost she's almost got synesthesia. Everything she sees, it's in the colors that she would paint.
Yeah.
So that was really, really fun. And I felt like that kind of brings the story up a little bit from, the sky, it's blue. No, it's all the colors that she would use to make it look that way. That was really fun. And it did take a lot of research.
Well, I think, I've painted in the past. I've made my living years ago as an artist, but I'm not an oil painter, and I am an abstract painter. So I always love it when people incorporate art into their books. And I also just love it when it's abstract art, because then I feel like it's giving such respect to abstract art. Because sometimes we don't, as abstract artists, don't get some of the respect when you talk to, and I'm going to use air quotes, like a real oil painter who's like paints things that look like things, and I just paint things that feel like things.
I that's what I want to learn how to do. I don't know. There's been this thing that keeps popping up on my Instagram. This chick that's doing, it's really. Have you seen that?
The stuff where she pours the stuff and just moves.
And she's doing all the stuff, and I'm like, oh, I really need to just take this class. I'm an Instagram marketer's dream.
You're like, I'll take any class.
All of it. I'm like, ooh, I really like that. I'm going to try that. So that's something that, one day.
So do you, you see yourself and you call yourself a thriller writer. That's who you are. Is there any other stories floating around in your head in a different genre?
Of course.
Do you ever think you'll explore something else?
Of course.
Have you already under a different name?
I'm very coy right now.
I know she's like flirty coy.
I'm going to be flirty coy, but let's talk in a couple of months.
Oh,
Ooh,
I like
definitely.
that.
my gosh. I feel like, so we had Tori last week and she was being flirty coy about a project she's doing too. And now I think
Lot
it's
of
a thriller
follow-ups.
writer thing. Yeah.
You know, it is hard. I'm sure you guys face this as well, because we were talking about pen names earlier. The market doesn't like you to do things different than what the market wants you to do.
Right.
So
Unless
if you
you're a
are
man.
Yeah. Unless you
Sorry,
are, yeah.
I said it.
Never mind. I was about to name specific people, but
No, that's
now I'm like,
no, because we've asked past guests, how do you avoid being kind of pigeonholed into one particular genre? And we've been told, well, my agent just seems to know where it goes. And we joke, okay, you just ask for an end cap and avoid any categorization, and that's great. But it does seem that some of our male guests have been able to do that, and our female guests are saying, I've had to use a different pen name, or I've been pretty much guided this direction for my career and told to stay in my lane.
Oh, there's a lot of stay in your lane.
yeah.
There's a lot of stay in your lane. And I mean, that's part of it is, you know, a Salesforce knows how to sell you. They know what the accounts want. Your readers, you know, when I switched from writing the Taylor Jackson series, I've lost a lot of readers because that's what they want. They want Taylor Jackson books. They don't want these weird standalones on Italian islands. You know, they want a Taylor Jackson story. You know, I do too. So it's you know, it's what the market will bear, but it's also what your readers want. But it's also got to be, if you have a passion for something, you can't let somebody say, you know what, stay in your lane. It's like, okay, fine. I'm going to do something and I'll do it under a different name. If that's going to be a big, you know, impediment for my career, I certainly don't want to derail my career. I've seen people do that, switching with a big genre, you know, out of thriller, out of crime fiction to fantasy or whatever. You know, yeah, you can shoot yourself dead. You don't want to do that. But I have so many stories to tell and so many ways that I want to tell them and so many things I want to explore that I hate the idea of, oh, you're only allowed to write X for the rest of your life. No, absolutely not.
Exactly.
I'm going to write what I want to write. And if I have to do it under a different name, I have to do it under a different name.
I love that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Good. So I'm a horror writer. And the 3 books I have out are all Gothic horror. And the book that I've just finished is not Gothic horror. And it's maybe horror. If there's Gothic elements, it might be horror adjacent.
Horror.
I mean, but so yeah, I'm just like already sitting here going, do people want this? I hope they want it. I know. Like, well, you guys want it. But you have to want it because you're
They will.
the Vox Vomitus.
I mean,
sense. Yeah.
It's just one of those things, right? You have to bet on yourself sometimes, and you have to believe that a good story is going to find a home no matter what.
Yeah.
And now we have a lot of opportunities and a lot of options for how we get our stories into the hands of readers. And that, I think, is something really, really powerful. So, you know, if you can't find a traditional path, okay, there's a non-traditional path.
Yeah.
There are indie paths. There are ways. Readers want books. They want to read. They want to read what they want to read, and they don't necessarily want to read what New York tells them they want to read. They want to read, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think there's nothing wrong with having more than one pen name. I mean, we said before we went live, like I write as a romance author as Allison Martine. When I write literary sci-fi, I'm A.M. Hubbard, and some of that is to go with genre conventions and to be able to say, okay, for males who maybe won't pick up a science fiction book written by a woman, they don't have to know I'm a woman if I don't use the word Allison at all. They'll probably figure it out when they read the book, but that's okay. And that's fine. I don't mind being flexible that way, but I love that you're not saying, oh, well, I'm only allowed to do this. And so now I've been successful here and I'm only allowed to be successful here. I love that you're breaking out of the box and jumping lanes here.
I don't like being beholden to other people for my success.
Oh,
You know, that's a really difficult place to be, to have to rely on other people. You know, thank God I have the career that I have. I have been so incredibly lucky and so incredibly blessed and have had amazing support from all sides. And, you know, okay, hopefully I'll have some support no matter where I go and what I do. But, you know, I've done 25 books now. It's time. If I want to, try something new, I'm going to try something new. And maybe I'll fall flat on my face and it won't work. And okay, but at least I tried.
And
I love
it
that.
probably won't fall. You probably won't fall flat on your face.
I don't know.
I mean, and if you do, you just get back up and
Right. That's why it's a pen name.
I've never heard of this person you're talking about. I think you've got me confused with somebody completely different.
I know. They'll be like, I didn't know J.T. Ellison wrote werewolf pornography.
Jen, you forgot. There's always a time travel element involved. And you know what, JT, if there was a time travel element, you'd fix your timeline.
No kidding, right? That would make it so much easier.
Yeah.
Time travel. And
or people could
teleport again,
back
right?
and forth from Nashville to Italy.
Wait, does the Concorde not exist anymore, or did we just ground it?
No, they don't fly anymore.
Why?
Oh, they haven't flown. I think they shut them down in 1976 or 1984, somewhere early on. They had a couple of crashes, so it was safety issues.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't fly anymore.
Gosh.
Which is a bummer because, 2 hours from New York to London is pretty awesome.
Oh, Tori Eldridge, she's quoting, "I don't like being beholden to other people for my success." Powerful statement, JT.
Yes, and that is coming from an actual ninja.
Oh yeah,
I know, right?
So metaphorical.
When a ninja says your statement is powerful, you get that framed and hang that in your office.
Might have to make a meme out of that one.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, and it's especially for women writers, we do sometimes have to fight a little bit harder to make the same trek. And that's, I don't know. Maybe that was a reckless thing to say, but
no, I think it's a truthful thing to say.
And let's hope though that as time goes on and the industry becomes more progressive and inclusive, that won't be the case 10 years, 20 years from now, that it'll be judged by the quality of the work, and then the career will be judged by the body of work versus, oh, well, we expect someone who looks like you from your background to produce this kind of story, and we're pushing you over here and deal with that.
That's been concerning to me. I mean, it's very hard to, I don't think anybody would want to read my books if all that I can write is what, I'm sitting in a suburban neighborhood and I'm a woman who doesn't have children. Okay, so if that's the extent of what I'm allowed to write about, oh my God, how boring can all of this get?
I know, because you just described my life and I don't want to read about that.
No, I don't want to read about that either. I mean, no offense, but I mean, my life, your life, okay, I love my cats, but how many, I want to explore brave new worlds. I grew up on Star Trek. I want to go out and maybe have sex with green women. Who knows, right?
Yes.
That's we were talking about them last night.
Now it's a party.
Yes,
it was William Shatner's 90th birthday yesterday or this week.
I saw that. Yes, that's amazing.
Like, oh my gosh!
I wore a Star Trek communicator to my prom instead of a corsage.
It's awesome. I love that.
I did do it. I'm like, oh, I think it was a next gen communicator too.
I had one of those. I did not wear it to prom.
You would have been my favorite. I think that's awesome.
I would have been your green lady.
I don't know where that comes from. You know what I mean.
I do.
It's to say you can only do this in the microscope is not a way to write. That you just can't. You have to be out there experiencing it, traveling, meeting new people, having friends that aren't like you, who are different than what you've been brought up with. That is hugely important to being a well-rounded person, much less a writer.
Well, and it's been so hard during the pandemic to even be able to get out. And now you've been also kind of sidelined by pandemic and surgery brain and having to do the therapy and everything. But I know we've all shared that just not being able to be out, interacting with people and people watching and sitting in a coffee shop to write. I don't produce well when I'm producing sitting in a back corner in the room in the same dirty, sad little house that I live in, because nobody wants to read about that. And not that I'm necessarily writing about being in the coffee shop, but just being out lets your brain breathe. And my brain is just kind of sad.
I miss overhearing conversations, like hearing somebody say something and you go, oh,
ooh.
And then there's like a whole story.
Well, and my kids have kind of made me deaf now, so I wouldn't be able to hear somebody 6 feet apart to be like, what did you say? Hold on. My kids are screaming again. Hold on.
Well, that's where Netflix has, and all of the streamers and all of the TV, it has made it so much better because we can actually see different things. We can kind of pretend we're overhearing things. We can pretend we're traveling. We can pretend that all of these things.
I've been in Colombia for the past couple of weeks. I have not learned enough Spanish. We've been watching Narcos, okay? So.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's a great show.
I didn't learn German from watching Dark, and I haven't relearned my Spanish from watching this. I feel kind of disappointed because I was planning on being bilingual again.
So we've been watching Stanley Tucci on his on CNN with his a whole thing going through Italy. He's going to every region in Italy. If you've not seen it, it's well worth it. So I've been brushing up on my Italian with it. So every Sunday night, we're having an Italian dinner and an Italian wine, and we're watching Stanley and chatting a little bit.
I love it.
And it's awesome.
I love it.
We should be doing cocaine before we watch Narcos.
There you go. Nothing like experiencing things.
It's not an experience I need to have. I will.
No.
But
maybe just weed. Let's stick with weed.
Just weed. Weed is fine. Like we're all like, it's fine. It's fine. Just get some stuff. Just gummies. Some gummies.
Get some gummies. Yeah.
I feel like I hate to say we're leaving on the end note of just go get some gummies, but we are out of time.
We were talking about gummy vitamins, Jen. They were
Gummy vitamins. Yes, definitely gummy vitamins. They are helpful. And I don't know. I'm an awkward winker, and I just winked.
I just winked at you too.
Well,
everything I do is awkward. It's fine.
Oh, Trisha's dying. She's just like she had to avert her gaze. JT, thank you for being here. People who watched this live and are catching it on the replay or just the audio, please go out and pick up JT's book, Her Dark Lies. Her website's been scrolling at the bottom. Thank you again. Thank you, Vox Vomitus Vixens, as always, for being great co-hosts. Stay tuned next week. We have fantasy author Chris Humphreys. He's also an actor, and he was the voice of Salem the cat on the original Sabrina. So get ready for me asking a lot of dorky questions about Sabrina and making him say things in Salem's voice. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to Roman Saratin, our producer. Thank you to Pam Stack, our executive producer. This has been a copywritten podcast with the Global Authors on the Air Network, and we will see you all next week.